Smart people don't fail. They freeze. Not because they can't move, because they see too much. They see everything that could go wrong, and almost nothing that could go right. They imagine collapse so vividly that opportunity never survives the simulation, so they hesitate, and hesitation feels intelligent. It sounds like responsibility, it sounds like maturity, it sounds like strategy, but it's none of those. It's fear with credentials. Smart people confuse clarity with control. They think if they understand enough, they can eliminate uncertainty. So they gather more data, more perspectives, more frameworks. But uncertainty doesn't disappear, it multiplies. And the smarter you get, the more reasons you find not to move. So instead of acting, you calculate. Instead of risking, you prepare. Instead of committing, you optimize. Preparation becomes your hiding place. Because thinking doesn't expose you, movement does. Action creates evidence. Evidence creates judgment. Judgment threatens identity. Because if you fail publicly, you don't just lose, you lose status. And status loss is social death. Now the system tightens the cage. Modern environments reward intelligent signals, not intelligent outcomes. You're rewarded for sounding sharp, not for building power. So you become articulate, insightful, nuanced. You learn how to explain the trap. Without ever escaping it, you become an expert in describing limitation. This is why smart people often feel exhausted, but unchanged. Their mind is always working. Their life isn't. Now comes the deeper fracture. Smart people don't trust impulse, they trust logic. But logic is slow, and slow systems lose to fast ones. Speed creates asymmetry. Asymmetry creates leverage. Leverage creates power. But intelligence seeks symmetry, fairness, balance, optimization. So while you wait for perfect alignment, others are already compounding motion. Not because they're smarter, because they're faster. Here's the psychological failure. Smart people try to reduce error. But progress requires exposure to error. Every meaningful move contains embarrassment, rejection, public stupidity, visible failure. Intelligence tries to avoid this. So instead of making imperfect moves, you design perfect theories. But theories don't create momentum. Friction does. Now watch how identity traps you. You've built a self-image around being capable, perceptive, above average. So failure becomes dangerous. Not because it hurts, but because it contradicts who you think you are. So you avoid moves where failure is visible. You choose paths where failure is explainable. You don't fail, you rationalize. And rationalization becomes your prison. Now the system finishes the job. It floods you with complexity, endless options, endless strategies, endless analysis. So your brain never locks onto one trajectory. Because once you choose, you lose every other path. And smart people hate closing doors. So they keep all doors open, which means they walk through none. This is how potential dies. Not by collapse, by infinite delay. You don't feel stuck, you feel in transition. But transition without direction is just stagnation with movement illusions. Here's the destabilizing truth. Smart people often become the most obedient because intelligence teaches restraint, it teaches patience, it teaches caution, it teaches risk aversion, which makes you predictable, which makes you governable. You don't need to be controlled, you control yourself, you filter impulses, you moderate ambition, you temper urgency, and you call it wisdom. But it's not wisdom, it's domestication. You weren't educated, you were trained to behave. The system doesn't need to suppress intelligence, it uses it. Because intelligent people self-censor before rebellion becomes possible. Now look at who escapes. Not geniuses, not visionaries, but people willing to look irrational. They act early, they move wrong, they embarrass themselves publicly, they violate social timing, they don't wait to be ready. They use motion to become ready. They understand something. Smart people resist. Clarity follows action, not the other way around. Smart people try to think themselves into certainty. Movers step into uncertainty and force clarity to appear. That's why one accumulates leverage and the other accumulates insight. Smart people stay stuck because intelligence gives them infinite ways to justify waiting. They can always explain why now isn't the right time, why the market isn't ready, why the environment is unstable, why conditions aren't ideal, and every explanation sounds reasonable, which makes stagnation feel responsible. But the truth is simpler. They are afraid of irreversible motion, because once you move, you can't pretend anymore. You can't hide behind intelligence. You either win or you become visibly wrong, and smart people would rather remain theoretically capable than practically exposed. So they hover, they refine, they polish, they delay, and slowly their intelligence becomes a museum piece, admired, unused. And this is why so many intelligent people never reach power, not because they lack ability, but because they refuse to bleed in public long enough to build momentum.